Today my guest is Edie Melson.
What God showed me is it was His job to protect my children, and it was my job to point them to Him.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Edie Melson. Now you are an author, a speaker, anything else?
Well, an educator. I'm a mom, just a regular person trying to live out my faith in a world that's not always comfortable with that.
Speaking about not always being comfortable, you've just gone through something that's actually very difficult, isn't it?
It is. Our oldest son went straight from high school graduation to Marine Corps boot camp to 2 tours in Iraq. And when he came home with an 80% disability rating. So it has been a tough time. And those deployments were incredibly tough because we didn't come from any kind of a military background. And so I was not prepared for the kind of fear, actually the kind of terror, the night terrors that I would face with him in harm's way.
Was he your oldest?
Yes,
He
is our oldest.
Okay.
He's married now and in college and doing well, but it has been tough. It has been really tough, and I cannot imagine going through it without God. I really can't. And I told God at one of the darkest points, no matter what, get me through this sane, and I'll do anything you want. And He said, share your story. And so here I am.
Sharing stories seems to be a theme right now in our ministry. The people that we're interviewing, so many people are talking about sharing stories. Story is so important, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think it's the transparency of the story that's important, because people need to know that you can make it through the rough spots. And a lot of times the only way you can get through that is to know that somebody else has been there before you and come out on the other side. And I want to be that light that's come out on the other side to help someone that's just entering.
And as part of that help, you've written a book called Fighting Fear, Winning the War at Home When Your Soldier Leaves for Battle. I'm going to let you show it so that we can get it.
This is actually an interesting book. It's put out by Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas, and it's a combination of devotional and anthology. Every chapter has 5 devotions that I wrote in it, and then it also has several stories of how someone dealt with a loved one who was away at war. And we have stories all the way from World War II up to the present Afghanistan conflict. And there's stories from husbands, from wives, from brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. So it's very relatable. And there's just a common theme that goes through that, and that is our strength comes from God.
Absolutely. Well, what was the hardest thing for you as far as the fear goes?
The hardest thing for me turned out to be a lie that I had believed forever, and that was that it was my job to protect my children. What God showed me is it was His job to protect my children, and it was my job to point them to Him. And once I realized that, once I accepted what I already knew, that He does love my kids even more than me, and that their welfare is more important to Him even than to me, then I could rest and realize that no matter what happened, God would get us through, and it would be the best thing. It wouldn't just be breadcrumbs getting us through. It would be the best thing. And so once I could accept that, I began to come out of that darkness of terrors. There were times when I would suffer from night terrors. I would wake up screaming from nightmares, thinking that, because he was on the front line. He was 18 years old, and people were shooting at him. And I just, it's so hard to wrap your mind around that. And it was very difficult. But through the process We had an amazing church, an amazing community. And those nights when I would sit in the recliner holding the Bible because I couldn't pray, every single time the next day I would get a phone call saying, God woke me up at 2 o'clock in the morning to pray for Jimmy. And I realized it wasn't my job to always have to say the right prayer or do the right thing at the right time, that God had that. He already had people in place because I couldn't be perfect. I couldn't do everything.
And I think so many mothers need to hear that, not just those who have their sons or daughters in harm's way, but just, I mean, so many of us worried when we send them off to kindergarten. And what you said about God being charged, that is something that we all need to realize.
It is. It's a lie that we have all bought into, is that we're in control, and we're not in control.
No.
I mean, I haven't been in control from the day I carried him in my stomach. You know, it's just, it could be an instant and something horrible could happen. And it's a scary thing, but it's also a very freeing thing to realize that, yes, I love my son. Yes, I'm going to pray for my son. Yes, I'm going to be faithful to teach him and equip him and let God equip him through me. But I can leave the results in God's hands and know that the best is there for my son. That is incredible as a parent to realize that.
Now, even with his injuries, it's still the best.
It is, and I wasn't real sure of that for a while, and he talked to me not too long ago, and he said, Mom, I don't regret going. He said, I really do not regret my decision. He said, I would not be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through this. And to hear that was very healing for me, to realize that even though maybe his future doesn't look like exactly what I thought it would, it's going to be the best for him.
And doesn't that happen a lot of times in life for all of us? That things that we don't want to go through, we come out on the other side saying, even though I wish I didn't have to go through it, I wouldn't want to be back where I was before I went through it.
Absolutely, and it's kind of ironic because I've been a women's speaker for many years, even before Jimmy went into the military, and one of my most popular talks has always been something that I claim daily, and that is, I wouldn't choose it, but I wouldn't change it.
Exactly.
And to see my son live that out is very powerful. It's very powerful. But it's kind of funny because I have two other younger children, both boys, and very active children, and they do a lot of really crazy things and go a lot of places, and one of them was going to Malawi, Africa, and we took him to the airport, and he met the group leader and everything, and they were giving all the information for the parents and stuff, and the group leader finally said, you seem awful calm about this. I had to laugh because I'm thinking a mission trip to Africa is so much easier than a war zone in Iraq.
So you were prepared.
I was prepared, and I found that the little things that used to throw me into complete panic mode, now I can just go, God's got this.
God's got this. My daughter often will say that to me. She'll say, Mom, God's got this.
Yeah,
So.
it's tough, but it's very freeing to realize that. In a lot of ways, I feel very special because God has shown me that early on in my life. I mean, I'm not young, but I'm also not ancient either, and to have that kind of assurance right now is very comforting.
So Romans 8:28, all things work together for good, that has new meaning for you, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does. But the verses I clung to were Romans 8:26 and 27, and that is, when you can't pray for yourself, the Spirit will intercede and pray on your behalf and pray in God's perfect will. And I realized on those nights when I couldn't pray that those were the nights that I could be 100% assured that I was praying in God's will, because I wasn't the one praying. The Spirit was.
That's right.
And so even what felt like a failure at the time was not a failure because I was relying on God.
look directly at the camera, and I'd like you to say something to a mother who has just had her son go off to war.
One thing I would like to say to you is hold tight to God, because He is holding tight to your son, and you're both going to be okay.
Okay. Or a daughter.
Yes, definitely. Son or daughter. Because the thing about the war now is there is no front line. Anybody that's over there is in harm's way. And that's a scary thing to realize, too. We have contractors that are over there, and anything can happen at any time. And one of the things that God has given me is the ability to reach out to military families who maybe weren't raised in the military or who don't know what to expect when a son or daughter makes that decision to serve and put their life on the line. And I can help them understand some of the things that are coming and some of the ways to get ready for it, where to hang on to for that strength that you're going to need.
Mm-hmm. Are there ways that our viewers can support families who are going through having one of their children deployed?
Just about every community has people who are being deployed out of it, even now. And there are local Blue Star Mothers of America chapters. Blue Star Mothers of America, Blue Star Mothers are mothers who have a child in the military or who have a child who has been honorably discharged from the military. And the Blue Star Mothers were incorporated by Congress in 1942. And our mission is twofold. Number one, to support the troops. And number two, to make sure that nobody forgets that we have men and women serving. And so local chapters are constantly in need of money to help mail packages. Our local chapter sends packages to the troops 3 times a year. Mm-hmm. And so we're always collecting supplies to send to the troops. So there are always things you can do that way. And there are other ways too. You can, one thing that helps a lot, especially with women who have husbands who are deployed, a lot of these women have young children. And so they are suddenly a single parent. So taking a child for an afternoon so a mom can go get her hair done or just go to Walmart alone is huge. And so there are a lot of things that people don't realize that they need.
What kind of supplies do they need to be sent over?
One of the things that we love to send, they always ask for beef jerky because it's protein. And that helps, they can pack it whenever they're on mission. Also, individual drink mix, powdered drink mix, or even the liquid drink mix, but individual size because they have their canteens and their bottles of water, and they can just dump that in there. They don't have a way to carry, like a full-size Gatorade dry mix. And individual snacks, individually packaged snacks. During the winter months, hand warmers and foot warmers, and they always need socks. Dark brown and dark green socks. Socks wear out over there. They usually double the socks, and they don't always get a chance to do laundry regularly, and that's hard on socks, trust me, from a mom. It's really
from a mom,
hard.
Boys especially.
Yeah, that's really hard on socks. And iTunes cards. Because we don't send movies over there anymore because nobody watches DVDs over there. They always plug into their Netflix account or they'll download movies or music from iTunes. And so they're always excited to get iTunes cards.
Is it okay for them to put some kind of encouragement scripturally or, some Christian encouragement?
If you're sending a box yourself, absolutely. Blue Star Mothers of America is not a Christian organization, and so we do not include like tracts or Bibles or anything like that, but definitely you can send it yourself. That's unfortunate, but that's just the world we live in right now.
How can people find an address to actually send them to?
You have to know somebody. The Department of Defense will not give out the addresses to our soldiers because that is a risk.
Right.
They are a high dollar target for terrorists, and their families are a high dollar target. So that is pretty closely guarded. So you need to know someone, or you need to work through an organization that has the ability to do that.
Okay. So at least, even if we can't include scripture, can we include encouraging notes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. And if you want to write a personal note, you can put anything you want in that note.
Okay.
And that can go out. There's no problem with that at all. So, but the biggest thing is to keep offering over and over again to these families who are in this situation, and to give them a chance. I know one of the best things that our family and friends did for me and for my husband and for my son's two younger brothers was they would ask how they were doing or how Jimmy was doing, and then they would sit there and let us talk about him. And you know, you don't want to impose on people, but sometimes you just want somebody to talk to about what he's going through and what he's experiencing or what you're experiencing. So sometimes a 5-minute listening ear can mean more than anything.
Wow, that's a really good point. That's the same thing when a person dies. You have a death in the family, that listening ear is so much more important than someone saying something.
Exactly. And a lot of times, you know, it's not what you say, it's the listening part of it. And of course,
just
always
being there.
Yeah, and always the prayer and letting them know that you're praying. Because like I said, so many times I would have these horrible nights and I would think, there's just nothing getting there. My prayers aren't going anywhere. And then people would tell me, I was praying for Jimmy last night. And that is such an incredible comfort to know that people are on their knees praying for my son and for his safety.
Which means your prayers were going somewhere, weren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, God was hearing.
You know, it's an incredible thing. It really is.
Well, where can people find you online?
Well, I have a website called ediemelson.com, but the main place you can find me for my military contacts is guideposts.org. So I'll have a military blog on there for military families. So again, it's a twofold purpose to that blog. Number one is to give military families or families with somebody in the military a place to gather and a place to share those heartaches and those struggles that we have in common from somebody who has actually been there, and to help communities learn how to minister to these families that are in the midst. And so we want people to be empowered to reach out and to come alongside these families. But a lot of us wouldn't know that. It's not something, especially if we're not in a military town, if there's not a base in our town, if somebody is deployed from a reserve unit, you really don't always know how to do it because there's nobody there to tell you. And so that's what we want to be, is a place where you can find out things that will actually serve these families in a positive way.
Well, thank you so much, Edie, for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.